أما بعد فنذكر أنفسنا بإخلاص النية لله تعالى في حضور هذا المجلس مجلس علم الدين. I praise Allah, I glorify Him, and I thank Him for all the blessings that He gives without Him being obligated. And I ask Allah to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and to protect the Muslim nation. I testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, the one without a partner, the one without an equal, the one without a similar, the one who is unlike anything in the universe, and nothing in the universe is like Him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because He is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne, and He is not attributed with fatigue, like the Jews say. Our Lord is glorified beyond any imperfection that the non-Muslims attribute to Him. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Ta'ala does not resemble that. And whoever attributes an attribute of the creations to Allah is outside of Islam. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah and His final prophet and messenger sent to all humans and jinn. And He is truthful about everything that He conveyed of the revelation. Thereafter, remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah in attending the session of Islamic knowledge, because having a sincere intention is a requirement to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life, among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise will be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah. We are grateful to Allah. We thank Him for the endowment of Al-Islam. We are grateful and thankful to Allah that we have been guided to Al-Islam, because Islam is the greatest blessing. It is through Al-Islam that the individual is guaranteed mercy in the hereafter. And so this is why Al-Islam is so valuable and precious, is because the individual in the hereafter, he would be able to enter paradise eventually because he died as a Muslim. So, and the pleasure and the enjoyment in paradise is never ending. It's everlasting, and it doesn't stop. It keeps on going and going and going. So that means that anything that we accomplish in this life, or any type of mercy that we had in this life, or any type of enjoyment that we had in this life, it's like nothing compared to the enjoyment of the hereafter. So the little time that the Muslim spends in this world, and the deeds that he does, and the patience that he has, and holding on to that belief, what does that get the Muslim in the hereafter? It gets him forever in paradise. So this is why it's so important for us as Muslims, or this is why it means so much to us as Muslims, our creed. And so not only that, but also the fact that the number one obligation, the thing that is the most obligatory, it is to be Muslim. This is the number one obligation. This is top priority obligation. This is what we are, the number one thing that we should do. And the one that doesn't do it, the one who does not fulfill this obligation, the accountable person who does not fulfill this obligation, that's the one who is damned to hell forever. So since that is the case, since it is the case that the number one obligation is to be Muslim, this is why it's so important for us to protect our creed. The number one obligation, the best good thing, is to be Muslim. And so we know this from the Quran, and we know this from the Hadith, from the Quran, إن الله لا يغفر أن يشرك به ويغفر ما دون ذلك لمن يشاء. So in this ayah, Allah Ta'ala informs us that He forgives, that He will never forgive shirk, and shirk is specifically named because it is the type of blasphemy that the people that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was interacting with, that they mostly did, and the society of Quraysh during the time, or the society of Mecca during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the people of Quraysh and the other Arabs, they were mostly idol worshippers. So this is why shirk is named. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ, which means indeed Allah Ta'ala never forgives for partners to be associated with Him. Indeed, Allah never forgives for someone to worship something other than Allah. وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ, يعني ما دون الشرك, لِمَن يَشَاء, يعني لِمَن يَشَاء, من المسلمين. So then in the next part of that, وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ, it means, and Allah forgives what is less than that. What is that? Shirk. What is less than shirk? Yani, what is less than blasphemy? Because shirk and other types of blasphemy, they go together in the same category, which is the biggest sin. Yani, the biggest sin is blasphemy. It's the number one sin. And then the next part of the ayah says, and Allah forgives what is less than shirk for whoever He wills. So this ayah is explicit that the biggest sin is shirk, or blasphemy. And from the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was asked, which sin is the biggest, or which sin is the most enormous? And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَن تَجْعَلَ لِلَّهِ نِدًّا وَهُوَ خَلَقَكَ, which means to associate partners to Allah while He is the only one who created you. So when he was asked, the Prophet ﷺ was asked by a companion, what is the most enormous sin? And the Prophet ﷺ, he answered, to associate partners with your Lord, to associate partners with Allah while He is your creator. Yani He's the one who created you, not anybody else. So that also tells us. And other ayat and other hadith, but that is sufficient, to confirm that. And so as it is the case, and as we learn in the obligatory knowledge, and just so that we mention some things from the Mukhtasar, the first thing that Shaykh Abdullah mentions, the first judgment, is that it is obligatory upon all accountable persons to embrace the religion of Islam, to remain steadfast to it, and to comply with what is obligatory upon them of its rules. So the first thing is to be Muslim. That's the number one obligation. Also another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَفْضَلُ الْأَعْمَالِ إِيمَانٌ بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. So this hadith also, it gives the meaning that the best good deed of all, the best good thing, the number one good thing, is to have the correct belief in Allah and His Messenger. And so since that is the case, since it is the case that it is an obligation, and the biggest obligation is to be Muslim, and that the biggest sin is blasphemy, or to not be a Muslim, so that means that the Muslim, and he is obligated to protect his Islam. He has to preserve his Islam. He has to avoid anything that takes him out of Islam. So this is part of our deen, is that we have to protect it from blasphemy. And we have to, just like, for example, then that companion, he asked, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, ثُمَّ أَيْ, after he asked him, what's the biggest sin? The Prophet ﷺ, he answered, to associate partners with Allah while He created you. Then he said, ثُمَّ أَيْ, then he said, and then what? And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أن تقتل نفسا بغير حق, يعني أو أن تقتل نفسا حرمها الله, وأن تقتل ولدك خشية الفقر. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned a specific type of killing. He said to kill your child out of fear of poverty. And so it's not specific to just killing your child because you're afraid that you're going to go poor because you can't provide for them. And that's one type of killing, but that was common also amongst the society of the idol worshippers. The Arabs of Mecca, before Islam came to them, it was their habit, and it was something that was considered a societal norm to bury newborn babies alive. Either because out of fear of disgrace and dishonor, because for some reason they were that extreme about their honor, and or fear of poverty. So that's why that was mentioned. But it's referring to killing unjustly. So the second biggest sin is killing unjustly. So since that is the case, and we would still have to, after leaving out, let's say, blasphemy and protecting our deen, and we have to avoid killing others unjustly. And like that. And in every unlawful matter, we have to stay away from it. Right? So how are we going to stay away from, let's say, blasphemy and what makes the person exit out of Islam if we don't recognize it? If we don't know the difference between belief and blasphemy. So it is obligatory upon every Muslim to preserve his faith in Islam and protect it against whatever invalidates, abolishes, interrupts it, namely apostasy. We seek refuge with Allah from it. So why is this so important? Number one, from the standpoint of inkarul munkar, from the standpoint of ordering the lawful and forbidding the unlawful. Number one is we have to order with what's good, and we have to prohibit and forbid what's evil. And the biggest evil is blasphemy. So we have to warn against it, we have to speak against it, etc. That's number one. Number two is the Prophet ﷺ, as a general rule, this is something that we follow. He said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب للناس ما يحب لنفسه. Which means لا يكمل إيمان أحدكم حتى يحب للناس ما يحبه هو من الخير. يحب للناس أن ينالوا هذا الخير الذي هو يحب أن يناله، يحب غيره من الناس أن يناله. وأكبر خير هو وأعظم خير هو الإسلام. فمن هذا الباب المسلم يريد غيره أن يسلم، المسلم يريد غيره أن يدخل في الإسلام، المسلم يريد غيره من المسلمين مثلا أن لا يقع في الكفر. فلذلك هذا المسلم الذي يريد ذلك أن يبين ويعلم مثلا القواعد التي بها يحفظ المسلم إسلامه. So the Muslim, from that aspect, because the Prophet ﷺ said, you won't be a perfect Muslim until you love for the people what you love for yourself, and until you love for the people the goodness that you love for yourself. That's an attribute of the perfect Muslim. So what we love for ourselves is Islam. So we want, let's say, the non-Muslim to become a Muslim because we want him to have Islam, because that is the greatest goodness. And for the Muslim, right, we want the Muslim to remain Muslim. We don't want him to exit from Islam. We don't want him to, for example, lose his deen, lose his Islam. We don't want him to exit from Islam. So from that aspect, we, for example, and how could someone do that without knowing the difference? That's why we explain and we clarify and we teach the rules by which the person, he can know the difference between blasphemy and belief. Because why? Because if he doesn't know if he doesn't know the difference between those two things, then what happens if he does do something that's blasphemy, but he doesn't know because he didn't learn, right? So how is he going to become aware? How is he going to know? How is he going to be able to fix himself if he's not even aware that something happened? He's not even aware that there is something to fix, so it won't be fixed. And then what's going to happen? That person is going to think that he is Muslim and he's going to go through his life acting as a Muslim and doing the acts of worship and putting effort and doing the apparent image of the acts of worship and putting effort. And let's say during Ramadan, they supposedly think that they're fasting and they're going through hunger and they're going through thirst. But then at the end, when the age of death comes to them, because they were ignorant, they never learned the rules, the age of death comes to them and gives them the bad news that they're going to go to hell forever, that they died as a non-Muslim because they did something and they didn't recognize what it was. They didn't know that this is blasphemy, but they did it and the judgment applies to them because they did it with their own will and they did it, for example, and not like while they were sleeping or while the pen was lifted. It was something that they were accountable for. But they were ignorant of the consequence, but the consequence still happens. So that's what the benefit of learning those rules, or that's what the benefit of understanding the difference between the belief and blasphemy. So that's what is important for the person to know. So alhamdulillah that our Shaykh, rahimahullah, he saw the importance of that and he realized the importance of that. And so he gave some information, or he dictated some information so that the Muslim can preserve his deen, so that the Muslim can understand the difference between this and that, so the Muslim can know if I said such and such a thing, or if I thought such and such a thing, or if I believe such and such a thing, then I would have to return to Islam and I would have to say the Shahada, etc., so that they could save themselves. So that they could save themselves from exiting from Islam or from being categorized as a non-Muslim. So that is something beneficial that, alhamdulillah, it's good to review it, it's good to mention it, it's good to have the proper understanding, and it's definitely not something that the person should feel intimidated or scared about. It's something very easy, very simple. And the reason that these things are mentioned, because there are people in this world that identify as Muslim, but let's say if they get frustrated with something, they curse Allah. And they completely think about themselves that they're still Muslim and that nothing happened. And then they were just angry and then they just said something. Like for example, how, let's say, a Muslim that's educated, a Muslim that cares about his hereafter, a Muslim that's on the good track, if he gets frustrated or something like that, what he'll say? He'll say, Subhanallah, or La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, or something, right? Something that is beneficial or something that won't be harmful to him. But that ignorant person, what does he say? Instead of saying something beneficial, instead of saying something that won't be held against him, they curse Allah. And they have no idea that they just became a kafir. They have no idea that they just became a kafir. They have no idea that they lost all their good deeds, that, for example, they were married according to Abu Hanifa, that their contract's immediately canceled. They have no idea that now they're murtad, that they're an apostate, and if they die, they go to hell forever. They have no idea about that because they didn't learn, they're ignorant about that. They didn't even know there's such a thing, what's this thing called blasphemy? They think that blasphemy is only renouncing Islam and becoming Christian or something like that because of their level of ignorance. So that's why these rules are explained. But you and me, for example, We're not going to go and curse Allah because we know that that's blasphemy. We wouldn't do such a thing. And even if like something like that happens with us, we're not going to be confused, like, oh, what's my situation? No, we're going to know what it is. So the thing with these rules is that once you know them, obviously it's so that you can identify. It's not for like literally a person that wants to be a Muslim, a person that cares about protecting their religion. They're not going to purposely commit blasphemy. They're not going to purposely contradict their religion. They're not going to purposely insult the religion. They're going to be away from it. They're going to stay away from it. They're going to be like repelled from it. Just like, like someone, let's say they're allergic to something, right? They're allergic to seafood. They're not going to order the lobster bisque at the restaurant because they know they're allergic to it. They're not going to say, oh, I'm going to get this lobster bisque, and then they're going to taste it and say, oh no, is this seafood? Am I going to get an allergic reaction? They're not going to have this situation. You know you're allergic to seafood, so you know you're not going to get it. You're not going to order the fish and chips because you're allergic to seafood. You're not going to get the shrimp because you know you're allergic to shrimp. So same thing, the Muslim, he wants to stay away from blasphemy. He doesn't want it. So why is he going to think something blasphemy? Why is he going to say something blasphemy? He's not. He's not going to. If he knows that this thing is blasphemy, he's not going to do it. He's not going to think something that's blasphemy. He knows, for example, saying that Jesus is the Son of God is blasphemy. So he's not going to say it. Or he's not going to believe it. Because he doesn't want it. That's from that aspect, many cases of whispers would be settled from that aspect. And what is the way for the person to cure themselves and for the person to not have those issues is for the person to know that what do they want? Do they want to be Muslim? Yes, they want to be Muslim. So you're not going to think something that's blasphemy. And you don't want blasphemy, so you're not going to be like, oh, I made myself believe this blasphemy thing. So but you have to know. Of course, the person, let's give an example. Someone is ignorant. They didn't learn. They didn't learn the obligatory knowledge. They didn't learn this knowledge that even like a 7-year-old knows. Right? When an educated 7-year-old Muslim, that Allah is not like us. Where would they teach them? Preschool? In kindergarten? That Allah is not like us? And as soon as like a kid is starting to have like some, grasp on words, you tell them Allah is just out of place, Allah is not like us. And a little kid knows this. But a person, right, that did not learn, they won't know that. They won't know that. And so since they're ignorant, right, they'll read, let's say, the Quran on their own, interpret it on their own. If they understand Arabic, they might read an ayah that says, Allahu nurus samawati wal ard, which literally, right, and this is how they supposedly translate it to English, they say Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Of course we don't say that again. And we say Allah guides the inhabitants of the heavens, which are the angels, and the inhabitants of the earth, which are the humans. But the ignorant person, he's going to read, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. So he's going to think, right? He's going to think that Allah is a light. And he thought that on purpose. Because he's ignorant. Because he reads and he's ignorant, he doesn't know. And the corrupt people who made that, who wrote that like that, and they want to do it like that so they can make people blaspheme. And it's a hidden agenda, and it's something from the shaitan. But the ignorant person, he's going to read that, and he's going to think that Allah is a light. And he thought it on purpose, because he's ignorant. So, for us, we say, that's kufr, that's blasphemy. If someone thinks that Allah is a light, that's blasphemy. So we're not going to think that. Like even if we read that, even if we see it, even if we hear someone say it, or we read it in a book, we're not going to think, oh, Allah's a light. No, because we know better. So that's what these informations That's what they bring us. These informations, they bring us to that. And they help the person understand that. So this is why, and for the person, it's not something that should cause them to be nervous. These rules are just applying. You know what I mean? Like when you're driving down the road, right? You see cars on your right, and you see cars on your left. How come you're not slamming into the car next to you? Because you don't want to. Because you don't want to crash on the road. So same thing with being Muslim. You know that something is blasphemy, so you're not going to do it because you're trying to stay away from that. You don't want that. You want the opposite of that. You want to be Muslim. So that's what these rules do for you. Is that they help you to understand. They help you to know. They help you to know what to stay away from. It's not so that you can think, oh, is this blasphemy? Did I do this? Of course you didn't do it because you're Muslim. Of course you didn't do the blasphemy because you're Muslim. And you know what blasphemy is, you stay away from it. So that thing that you said, when you said it, and you said it because you think that it might be blasphemy and still you said it, you think that it's going to take you out of Islam and still you said it, so that means you got a problem. That means you have a problem. If you're worried and nervous about leaving Islam, and then there's something that you say that you think, do you think before you talk? This thing, if I say it, I'm going to be nervous if I left Islam or not? I'm going to get nervous and think that I say something wrong? Then don't say it. It's that simple, don't say it. Somebody else said it. Okay, let them ask. Let them ask. For you, you say, whatever, if this person meant this, if this person meant that, etc. We're going to go through some of that. Then that's their judgment. But you're not. On Judgment Day, you're not going to be asked about why this person said that, because you're not them. Let them worry about it. But these rules help. These rules help. I'm just going to read through them, and then go into like 2 or 3 of them in deep dive on them. So the first rule is whoever denies any religious knowledge that is known by necessity blasphemes. We're going to explain what known by necessity means. Even if he did not know that such a saying takes one out of Islam. This is elementary for us. Right? Someone, for some reason, right? Some people, they just like to talk. They just like to say so. They just like to, be shocking. Right? So you'll have someone who grew up, let's say, in the Muslim world. They know for sure that Islam says alcohol is forbidden. They know for sure that Islam says that. But for shock value or for attention or for whatever, they say alcohol is not forbidden. To make someone laugh, as a joke, whatever. They say it's okay to drink alcohol. Immediately you know, you judge them as a blasphemer. Immediately. You don't hesitate about that. You're not confused about that. That's the first rule. That's the first rule. Someone denies any religious knowledge that is known by necessity. And we're going to explain what that is. But for us, that's elementary. Even if he did not know that such a saying takes one out of Islam. And this happens on social media a lot. People on TikTok, people on Instagram, they're on the live. They identify as Muslim, but they're ignorant. They just say the craziest things. And they have no idea that by saying that, they get taken out of Islam. And then when you bring it to their attention, they say, I was just joking, I didn't mean it, etc., etc. But for us, it's elementary. We know that doesn't matter if you're joking. We know it doesn't matter if you didn't mean it. We know that if you said it and you know what you're saying, you blaspheme. That's it, you're out of Islam. To us, that's elementary. But there's many people out there that don't know it. There's many people out there that they're not aware. So that's why we go by the rule. We follow the rule. And we follow the rules so that we can avoid that bad thing. And we teach that rule so other people can avoid that bad thing. Just like we said, from the aspect of wanting the good for others that we want for ourselves. Examples are like denying the obligation of the 5 prayers and denying the prohibition of drinking wine. We're going to explain known by necessity. But now we're just reading the rules. The second rule, also elementary. And the child, when they become mumayyiz, and they're 7 lunar years of age, if they're mumayyiz before 7 lunar years, we're not talking about that. We're talking they're mumayyiz and 7 lunar years, the parent, the guardian, is obligated to teach them this. Whoever says, believes, or does that which is explicit blasphemy, every saying, action, or belief containing belittlement of Allah, His messengers, His books, His angels, His rules, His promise, His threat, His well-known practices of Islam, or His verses is blasphemy. Examples of that are cursing Allah and mocking the Quran. Can you believe that there's people that claim to be Muslim that make fun of the Quran? Can you believe that? Of course you can. You see it on social media. You see it. Allahu A'lam. Some people, they might see that every day. Mocking the Quran. Are you going to be confused? No. Because this one, it comes down to belittlement, making fun of, degrading. So would you, as a Muslim, would you do something that's degrading to Islam? No, you wouldn't. And if, as someone that wants to be Muslim and hates blasphemy and doesn't want to exit from Islam and knows that mocking or making fun of Islam takes you out of Islam, so of course you're not going to mock Islam. Of course you're not. So do you see where we're going with this? It's very easy once you identify, once you identify blasphemy, etc., then you stay away from it. The third rule, whoever says, believes, or does that which is explicit blasphemy does not benefit from uttering the shahada while having a doubt about the judgment. Rather, he has to realize that the blasphemy took place and then say the shahada with the intention of clearing himself from this blasphemy. Yeah, because he has to have the correct belief. And he has to have the correct belief. He can't be like, oh, that person who was mocking the Quran, is that blasphemy or not? He can't, because that itself is blasphemy. So as long as the blasphemy is still existing in the heart of the person, there's no way that they can, enter into Islam if they still have blasphemy in their heart. It's just that simple, that easy. The fourth rule, the one who denies the expressions of the mutawatir hadith does not blaspheme. However, he blasphemes if he denies its meaning when that meaning is religiously known by necessity, and it's similar to the second rule. Similar to the first rule of denying religious knowledge that is known by necessity. The fifth rule, whoever determines to commit blasphemy in the future or equivocates about it, he hesitates, or makes it contingent upon the occurrence of a matter, blasphemes immediately. If someone intends to leave Islam, they leave Islam right away. Because in order to be Muslim, you have to have the firm conviction. The firm conviction, certitude. Not, am I going to stay Muslim or not, or am I going to be Muslim or not? No, you have to have the firmness. And that's one of the tactics of the shaitan and the tactics of the agents of the shaitan in this day and age. Many people are like, subhanAllah, so flimsy. They don't want to have like a firm stance on anything. I guess, maybe, I don't know, whatever you say. Nobody wants to have a firm stance on anything. But in Islam, you have to have the firm stance. That you are on Islam and against blasphemy. The firm stance. So the person is hesitating about that, then they wouldn't be Muslim. It says similar is the case of he who orders others with blasphemy. Because that comes down to what? And it comes down to being pleased with blasphemy. Examples of that are like saying, if I lose my money, or if my child dies, I'll become a Jew. Na'udhu billah. So that It's as if they're saying, and I would accept blasphemy sometime in the future. That takes them out of Islam immediately, right away. Or if the person says, I will leave Islam for another religion, and he will, and in the future tense, they exit Islam right away. Na'udhu billah. The sixth rule, any deed which is only done by a blasphemer is blasphemous if done. Examples of that are like throwing the book of the Quran in the trash or prostrating to an idol. And those are the actions that only kuffar do. So if someone does it, they become a kafir. And so throwing the Quran in the trash, that's definitely what the kuffar do, only them, knowingly. And then also like defiling the Quran. Like the kuffar, what they do is they put bacon on it, na'udhu billah, or they use it like toilet paper, na'udhu billah, or they step on it, wal-'iyadhu billah. So that's an action that is specific to a non-Muslim. So anyone who does an action that only the non-Muslims do is blasphemous. Any deed which is only done by a blasphemer, like those examples, like throwing the Quran in the trash, or like making sujood to an idol. Like even if the person, even if they say that they're just joking or that they're just pretending, right? Like for example, if someone was, let's say, acting in a play or in a movie or in a TV show, and they bow to an idol, and they blaspheme. They prostrate to an idol, they blaspheme. And they're doing what the kuffar do. I use the word bowing, but I didn't mean specifically bowing, just like doing what the kuffar do to the idol, worshiping it. How they worship it. That would be kufr. And that person's doing it because it's part of a movie. So he might think, oh, it's okay if I do this if I'm not really trying to do it. No, they blaspheme. Another example of that is like the sign of the cross that some people do on themselves, where they like touch their forehead and then they bring their hand down towards their chest, and then they bring their hand to the right shoulder, and then they bring their hand to the left shoulder. That is something that only the kuffar do, and that would be blasphemous to do. So the Muslim, and he knows those things are only for non-Muslims, so the Muslim wouldn't do that. The seventh rule, whoever wishes for the permissibility of an issue that was forbidden in all the laws revealed to prophets has blasphemed. An example of that is wishing for the permissibility of fornication and adultery, and because there's certain prohibitions that were always forbidden. And in all the revealed laws, they have been revealed as forbidden. So whoever wishes that one of those things was halal, they blaspheme. And the eighth rule is whoever inexcusably accuses a Muslim of blasphemy, blasphemes. So those are those rules. And when we said inexcusably, it means a specific scenario. It doesn't mean that, for example, the person that they heard about a Muslim who committed suicide, and they think that if the Muslim commits suicide, they automatically become a kafir. And so they heard about some Muslim that committed suicide and they called him a kafir. That's not the case that we're talking about. That person doesn't blaspheme because, and he had an excuse, and there was something that he misunderstood about the rule and the Islamic law, and he thought that's the judgment, that if a Muslim commits suicide, that he becomes a non-Muslim. That's what he thought. So he just heard about a Muslim committing suicide and he judged him as a kafir. So here, and he has an excuse, so he wouldn't be judged as a kafir, even though he's wrong. If a Muslim commits suicide, just by committing suicide, he doesn't blaspheme. He only blasphemes by committing suicide if he does it as an act of objecting to Allah. Because some people, they commit suicide, and it's because they want to rebel against Allah. So in that case, obviously, it comes down to their intention. There's no way that you can know that, unless the person, let's say, wrote a note or something. But the point is, that ignorant Muslim, he thought if a Muslim commits suicide, he exits from Islam. So when he heard about a Muslim that committed suicide, he judged him as a kafir. He said, oh, he's a kafir. But he's wrong, the Muslim who commits suicide just by committing suicide doesn't make you a kafir. So that person, he incorrectly judged a Muslim as a kafir. Does he exit from Islam for that? In this case, no, because he has an excuse, he thought that Muslim did something that was blasphemous. So that's why he judged him as a blasphemer. He didn't inexcusably judge him as a blasphemer. He didn't say, although there's no reason at all for me to judge you as a blasphemer, I'm still going to go ahead and call you that. That person blasphemes. Why? Because he's calling Islam kufr. That's why the person blasphemes, because he's saying about a Muslim for no reason that he's a kafir. So it's as if he's calling the religion that he's on kufr. It's as if he's saying Islam is kufr. It's as if he's saying the Muslim is a kafir. So he's contradicting the religion, so he exits from Islam. And those are the 8 rules. It's not like rocket science, it's not like calculus or like for me algebra. It's not something complicated. It's something very straightforward, very simple. But the issue is sometimes the person, and when they experience a rule, it's as if like they have some disconnect, some trouble in applying the rule. And it's as if they don't want that, they don't want to be the one to, let's say, tell this person that this is what happened, this is the rule. And so they try to psych themselves out. Or they try to delude themselves. But what's important to do is just follow the rule. Just follow the rule. SubhanAllah. So let's go a little bit deeper now. Starting with the first rule. So the first rule, like we said, is whoever denies any religious knowledge that is known by necessity blasphemes. Anyone who denies any knowledge, any religious knowledge that is known by necessity blasphemes. Even if he did not know that such a saying takes one out of Islam. Examples are like denying the obligation of the 5 prayers and denying the prohibition of drinking wine. So first, what does it mean, known by necessity? It simply means that it's something that is commonly known amongst Muslims, scholars and non-scholars, young and old, ignorant and knowledgeable, city dwellers and desert dwellers, that any Muslim in the world that you ask about this judgment, they'll tell you the judgment right away, instantly. Ask any Muslim, what is the judgment of pork? Immediately they'll tell you haram. Immediately, without thinking. Ask a Muslim, what is the judgment of alcohol? Immediately they tell you haram. Ask a Muslim, what is the judgment of fornication? Immediately they tell you haram. Ask a Muslim, what is the judgment of riba? Immediately they tell you haram. Immediately. Old Muslim, young Muslim, male, female, black, white, scholar, non-scholar, immediately they tell you. That's what it means known by necessity. So here what we're saying is that the Muslim, he doesn't doubt about this thing, and he doesn't hesitate about the judgment of this thing. He knows it right away, without thinking, without having to think about it, without anything like that. This is what it means known by necessity. So what does that mean then And we say known by necessity because, like we said, the Muslim, all Muslims know this. So that's why it says known by necessity. Why? Because that is relevant to the rule. And whoever denies something known by necessity. And so, what does that mean? It means that the person is contradicting the religion. So like if someone says that alcohol is halal, if you hear someone say that alcohol is halal, and they supposedly identify as Muslim, immediately you judge them as a non-Muslim. Immediately. Because why? Because it's known by necessity. Almost every single Muslim that you ask, they'll tell you that it's forbidden. But then when that person who said that alcohol is halal, but you tell them, "A'udhu billah, this is blasphemy. This is contradicting Islam." They'll say, "Oh, we're just joking. Oh, we're just playing. Oh, we didn't mean it. Oh, this, oh, that." It doesn't matter. So that's pretty easy. That's easy, Eddie, for us. And you might think, like, what Muslim would do such a thing? Well, don't be surprised. We're living in the end times. We're living in evil times. It's the end of the world. Close to the end of the world. And aren't there people right now who identify as Muslim who are trying to justify homosexuality and sodomy? They're trying to justify. They're trying to say it's halal. They're trying to say it's okay. They're trying to say that it's not sinful. So anybody who believes that, they exit from Islam. There's no justification. There's no way around it. So alhamdulillah, that's clear. Now what is the details of this rule? The details of this rule is any judgment in Islam that the individual is aware of, and that he believes this is what the religion says, he believes that's what Islam says, whoever denies it or contradicts it, he exits from Islam. Because essentially it's like him saying God is wrong. So if you know, for example, and you believe that Islam judges something, if the person believes and he believes that Islam says this is the judgment, if he goes against it, if he denies it, if he contradicts it, if he says the opposite of it, he exits from Islam. Because as if he's saying God is wrong. And if he believes this is the judgment that God revealed, and he's saying the opposite, how could that person be a Muslim? They can't. Now if the person, for example, has some confusion, or there's a difference of opinion, and then one imam said it's halal, and the other imam said it's haram, and he wants to pick this one or that one, or he's in between, or he's thinking which one is it this or that, he's okay. He's okay because there's a difference of opinion about it. So there's no problem there. Because it's either this or either that. And there's that difference of opinion that those imams that they deduced, and that they were allowed to deduce, and that's the opinion that he got. That's the judgment that imam did and that imam got. And so we're allowed to follow them. That's following the deen. Subhanallah. So we see that first rule is easy. Now if the person, if he denies something of the Islamic law, or if he denies something that's known by necessity, and there's no way for him to know it except by learning, except by hearing it, but he never heard it before, he was ignorant of it, even if it's known by necessity, in that case he doesn't blaspheme. Why? Because he didn't know about it. And this is with matters that's related to the things that you can only know by learning. The things that you can only know by learning. Because in that case, how could the person be accountable? If the only way for you to know it is by learning it, by hearing it from someone, and you never heard it from anyone, and so you denied it or contradicted it, even if it was known by necessity, the person doesn't blaspheme. He sins because he's obligated to know that, and obligated to learn that, and obligated to hear that. He gets an enormous sin for being ignorant of that, but he doesn't exit from Islam. Even like, let's say, with the case of alcohol. Even with the case of alcohol, let's say that there was a person who he really didn't know, he never heard from the Muslims that alcohol is forbidden, and he never learned this judgment. And he didn't know any similar judgments that would lead him to know that judgment. So he truly was ignorant of it. Is that an unlikely scenario? Yes, it's unlikely. But is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Has it happened in the past? It's happened in the past. So it's not just hypothetical to the extent where it has not happened at all. It's happened. So, in the case, let's say, of alcohol, if someone did not learn that it's haram, they never heard from Islam, they never heard in Islam that it's haram, nobody taught them that. Like, let's say, a brand new Muslim. Someone who's brand new Muslim, they never learned this, and they never heard it before in their life. So they denied it, or they said that alcohol is halal. In that case, he doesn't blaspheme. In that case, he doesn't blaspheme. He's not judged as a kafir for that. Even though what? He contradicted the religion. Even though he denied something that's known by necessity, but here, because of what? Because the only way he can know it is through learning, and he never learned it. He is excused from blasphemy, but not from sin. It's that simple. Now, there's certain matters, certain knowledge that you can know it without hearing it, without learning it. So for example, if you use your mind right, if you use your mind correctly, you can know that the Creator exists. If the human being uses his rationale, if he uses his rational evidence correctly, if he goes through the proper steps mentally, he would know for sure that the Creator exists. Why? Because the mind says, we're here right now. This is real. So this universe that is here and that we know is here is changing. We know that whatever changes has a beginning. We know that whatever has a beginning, it can't pre-exist before itself to make itself exist. So if it has a beginning, that means it was created. And so that thing that made the universe exist, it's impossible that it would be like the universe too, because if it was like the universe, then it wouldn't create anything. Because if it's like the universe, it means it has a beginning. If it's like the universe, that means it's specified with attributes and with existing. So if it's like the universe, it can't create anything. But the universe is here. So that means there is a creator, and that creator is not like us. At all. In any way. So you can get to that with your mind. So those things that you can learn with your mind alone, if the person denies it or contradicts it, any of those things that are known by necessity, he blasphemes. And he's not excused. So for example, the person can know with his mind alone that the Creator is not like us. So if he says, if someone is ignorant and they attribute, let's say, a bodily attribute or an attribute of the creations to Allah, but he never heard that Muslims don't say that, he still blasphemes. He never learned. Let's say someone, they identified as Muslim, but they never learned, right? They never learned the obligatory knowledge, but they believe that Allah is a big giant light. We don't say about them, oh, they never learned, so they're excused. No. We say that person can't be a Muslim. The one who believes that Allah is like a creation, he can never be a Muslim until he clears that from his heart. Because those matters are related to the core meaning of the two shahadas. So those matters that are related to the core meanings of the two shahadas, those matters, whether the person was a brand new Muslim or not, whether the person was educated or not, whether the person heard it or not, they blaspheme, period. There's no hesitation, no doubting, no need to go ask, no have to go find out, no have to go make sure. The person who they have any doubt or denying about matters that are related to the core meaning of the two shahadas, that person cannot be a Muslim. So examples of that are like what? Like saying that Allah is a light, or believing that Allah has children, or believing that Allah is sitting on the throne, or established on the throne, or rising above the throne. That person is not excused, even if they supposedly became Muslim 2 minutes ago. Because why? Because the one who has that belief, the one who has that in their heart, Islam can never be in their heart. Because that thing doesn't coexist with Islam. So that basically covers the first rule. It's that easy, that's simple. Things that are related to the core meanings of the two shahadas, the person is judged as a blasphemer immediately, period. If the person thought that Allah has partners, or that Allah has a body, or that Allah is a light, then immediately that person is a non-Muslim. There's no excuse for them. Now for the matters that are not related to the core meanings of the two shahadas, but are known by necessity, like for example the prohibition of alcohol. If there was a case where a Muslim had never heard that this is haram, that alcohol is forbidden, or anything related to any information that can only be known through learning it, through hearing it from someone. If someone denies it or contradicts it ignorantly, and while having not known that or learned that, then they don't blaspheme in that case. In that case, they are just committing an enormous sin because they are speaking without knowledge. So the difference here is, if someone never learned that alcohol is forbidden, and because of that he said it was halal, in that case we don't judge him as a kafir. We don't say that he exited from Islam. We say he committed an enormous sin because he did not learn the obligatory knowledge and he spoke without knowledge. But as far as his judgment, we still judge him as a Muslim, but after telling him this is the judgment in Islam. Islam says that alcohol is forbidden. If after knowing that the person goes back and contradicts it, then he exits from Islam. And that's the case with any Islamic ruling that can only be known through learning. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. And another example of that, of what nobody is excused about, is like if someone belittles or degrades a prophet. If they say about a prophet, for example, that it's something bad, or that they were a liar, or that they committed an enormous sin, that would be related to the core meaning. So the person will not be excused. SubhanAllah. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Are there any questions about that? We have here. Someone said, can you repeat that please? But which part? The ruling, the first rule. And the first rule is to read it again for to repeat it. The first rule is whoever denies any religious knowledge that is known by necessity blasphemes, even if he did not know that such a saying takes one out of Islam. Examples are like denying the obligation of the 5 prayers and denying the prohibition of drinking wine. So like we said, those judgments that can only be known through learning, the person, if he never learned them and he denied them or contradicted them, he doesn't blaspheme, but he commits an enormous sin. An example of that is if someone never learned that alcohol is forbidden, and he never knew that in Islam they say alcohol is forbidden, and that person, because of that, he says it's halal, then we don't judge him as a non-Muslim. We just say he committed an enormous sin. And so after teaching him that, after telling him Islam says it's forbidden, that's what all the Muslims believe, that alcohol is forbidden. If after knowing that information, that person contradicts it and says the opposite, then in that case we judge him as a blasphemer, because now he knows the information and he's saying the opposite. Is that clear? Did that clear it up? طيب. Yeah, if he heard it and then if he knew that that's what the Muslims say and he denied it, then he blasphemes. And that would mean he's contradicting the religion. It's as if he's saying that God is wrong. Is that clear? You're welcome. طيب نهلل لا إله إلا الله